Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. We are back with Filip, who's head of data and strategy behind the famous Risk On, Risk Off tool, which has seen you become one of the top traders on eToro. And mate, you've been doing amazing work growing that portfolio and helping all our members as well. But how are you seeing the market of late?
Thank you for the intro, Alex. As always, I mean, from a macro perspective, I think everything's rosy. I've got some tools and stuff that I can show everyone. If you want, I'd like to share my screen. So just click that share.
And for everyone at home, you'll find all Philip's stuff under data for members, or you can follow along on his Substack and his Twitter, and I'll post all those links below as always. But yeah, you've got that up on screen now for everyone at home.
Yeah, exactly. So these are the main macro and crypto factors that I'm looking at to give me an idea of whether I should be risk on, whether I should be risk off. So right now, as you can see, it's all green. Green basically means risk on. Each one of these individual factors have been back tested. So each one of them individually outperforms a HODL BTC strategy. So this gives me that confidence to not rely on my emotions, but just focus on this. As you can see, global liquidity, fantastic. The US economy is doing fantastic. The dollar strength is weakening. Regulatory risk, we're all good. Other risk on assets like the NASDAQ are performing fantastically. We've got technical momentum behind us. We've got BTC keeping market structure trending up. The BTC ETF inflows as well, fantastic, and mainstream adoption. So we could not be in a better macro environment from where it stands, to be honest.
Yeah, and that's what we're kind of seeing with that talk as well, and the treasuries. And I think, how do you feel this cycle's been different for you? From my point of view, it's a lot more about high net worth individuals and corporates and countries, which we keep talking about, and less so retail. But I think it's still important for retail. There's still no better place to try and save some money, I don't think. But yeah, how are you seeing that all sort of tie together?
Yeah. So I actually made a post the other day that where I said like this has probably been the most difficult cycle that I've certainly ever seen, and most folks would have seen, and that's purely because of the what we were expecting versus what actually happened. This has been a BTC cycle all along. BTC has led the way. There's been some outperformance in select alts for short periods of time, but it's largely been BTC driven. In saying that, I think one of the things that we need to sort of think about is, uh, most people will say like, the retail isn't here yet, and I've got an indicator in my in this tool. I'll just zoom out a little bit here, which says normies entering, and that thing has been red since June 2025. For the most part, it's been red for the last over a year, red or yellow, basically saying this is hot. Normies have been entering. The only difference is normies in 2021 is very different to normies today. So normies in 2021 was mum and dad buying Dogecoin and whatever else. And normies today is you've got banks buying BTC, you've got institutions allocating to BTC, you've got treasury companies popping up all over the place. You've got banks offering crypto trading services, that sort of thing. So for me, that's normies, people that were outside the space, outside the crypto world, now coming in and taking a slice of the pie. So for me, normies have well and truly been there. The only difference is they've got an appetite for something else. They've got an appetite for yield. They've got an appetite for BTC. They've got an appetite for mining, for treasury companies, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and a longer time frame horizon as well. More experienced
Big time.
traders, that type of thing as well. So tend to be stronger hands, I guess you'd say, than previous cycles.
Big time. And I might add as well, I'll show you the Vision Track indices as well. I say this cycle has been hard. If you look at the year-to-date scores of the top crypto hedge fund indices, organized by whatever the strategy is, whether it's a quant or a fundamental strategy. This is as of June 30. Their year-to-date scores compared to BTC hasn't been that great. So it's not like all the experts have outperformed or done really well. Meanwhile, retail hasn't done that well. In fact, you can clearly see that their strategies haven't been working. They've gone max long on perhaps altcoins or something like along those lines, depending on what the strategy is, and it hasn't paid out. So it's like I say, it's been quite a cycle, and it's been difficult to nail it.
You've been navigating it pretty well, though. Do you want? I know you've got more slides there you want to get through. So, what do you want to go into next?
Sure. So one of the things, so we talk about altcoin season. One of the things that I've been looking at for like when altcoin season is, okay, cool, Bitcoin dominance, that's one thing. But the other thing is like, well, what drives price in crypto? And people far smarter than me have, said global liquidity drives price. Lynn Aldens of the world, Michael Howes of the world, basically gave us an idea that 70 to 80% of the price appreciation is down to global liquidity. So if we look at some, in this case, rudimentary global liquidity metrics, you can see, well, we had an altcoin season and a monster altcoin season in 2020. And that was driven, global liquidity was up around 18 or 19% just that year alone. 2021, a further 6%. So you can see that because of this global liquidity appreciation, price also appreciated in the altcoin market. In 2023, we had 3%, 2024, 0.78, and 2025, we've had 7. So we haven't actually had anywhere near the amount of liquidity injections that we have. So there's no reason for me to believe that until these numbers start getting larger, and by all means it may, but until these numbers start getting larger, I don't see a monster alt season, even though that's something that folks expect in Q3 or Q4. So that's one of those things that I'm watching and looking at and using it as a trigger for altcoin season.
Fantastic.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, and at the same time, I know Michael and I were talking a lot about how ETH needed kind of a new narrative and a new lease of life to get some momentum behind it, but we've so quickly gone from that week to 1,200 to 3,800. So, these are reasonably big gains. So the same with a lot of the other alts as well. And if you've got a good strategy, and like you said, when you took some profits and put back in, that has been it's not just going to be everyone's making money while we're kind of in these tighter ranges and it's a more mature market and more stable kind of growth. So yeah, I continue to feel like we're not going to get a lot of people looking for a 10x or whatever that is. They're going to get burnt because I just don't think we're going to get that for the alts and that type of thing.
100%. Yeah, totally agree. I shared something a little while back, basically saying because of the amount of tokens that are being minted each day, and many of them are graduating as well. And then you look at the amount of unlocks as well. So you've got these new tokens going online, so increasing the supply of tokens that people can allocate to. And then you also have unlocks, so more tokens coming online that are or from existing projects or assets. So you put that together, and then you have less global liquidity increases than say 2020. You put that all together, and it's like, yeah, perhaps we don't see a 3x from here. So, I use XRP as an example. People are like, there's a 3x in. There absolutely was a 8x in it from the cycle lows. But now when we're sitting at like whatever it is, $110 billion market cap, are we really thinking about it being a 2x from here? If we think about, well, it's very difficult for us to understand, well, what is $110 billion market cap? What does it mean to double that? So I used an example here on Sui. Like if Sui were to gain 70%, what does that look like? Well, then they'd be in the ballpark of Mitsubishi Corporation, Petrobras Brazil, the London Stock Exchange, Marriott International at 76 billion, PayPal at 75 billion. If we let that sink in, these are huge numbers, and they're not. Sui is not meant to be valued greater than PayPal that's been around for 27 years and has, 220 million monthly active users compared to the inflated 40 million that Sui has before, with the incentives of the Sui Foundation. So these are the sorts of things that we should be thinking about. Yeah.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And I mean, I guess you can argue that all these companies might have weakening fundamentals in the world we live in, and people are looking to the future. But yeah, I think at some point, when you see profit taking and all that, as we see, it's still pretty easily for a lot of these crypto valuations to fall, 90%, even if Bitcoin doesn't have anywhere near that depth of drawdown. When people want to take profit back into Bitcoin or back into the real world and pay off their house and go, I achieved my goals this cycle, those alts fall just as hard because of that thinness of the liquidity and how many altcoins saturating the market there now are, and all those other factors we just touched on.
Exactly. If we just look at Sui, which has had the best narrative for the majority of this bull run, at least since 2024, it's had two local tops. Both drawdowns have been about 70% in the middle of a bull market. So you can just imagine what sort of drawdown it would have in a risk-off environment in a bear market. So yeah, I've nailed it. One other thing that I'd also like to say is, something that I've been thinking about and talking about a little bit more often is I think we should stop thinking about altcoins as these, these magical internet money that can 10x, and start thinking about altcoins as this is a high beta tech play that I'm making, whatever the altcoin may be. And as such, a 30% return, say in 2 months, is actually a really good return. You wouldn't be able to get that in a year in traditional markets. You wouldn't be able to get that in 2 years in the S&P 500 for the most part on an annualized basis. So I think changing our frame of mind from magical internet money 10x to high beta tech play 30% is a great return will do folks a lot of good as well.
Yeah, and that's the reason more and more people have been playing it pretty safe to try and just capture that return rather than looking further down the list. Unless you really feel like you've found a project that is fundamentally good and even undervalued because they're launching at these high values and these high token unlocks and all this type of stuff. So it's the days of the 10x's and that I think are probably behind us for the most part. But what else have you got to share with us, Philip?
Exactly. One of the things that I've been sort of looking at is focusing on, at the start of the year, I said, like, I focused on like what is it that it's actually going to drive like a bull case in crypto, and much of that has already played out. So a strategic Bitcoin reserve, Fed policy, so cutting more rates than normal, institutional adoption, so an increased pace of institutional adoption, the market structure bill, and then the stablecoin bill. So we've got the stablecoin bill, we've got institutional adoption at record levels. The market structure bill is about to come online, or supposedly in September, October. Fed policy, we're still looking at about 2 more rate cuts, and then the strategic Bitcoin reserve is pending. So a lot of this stuff is already, as bullish as can be for the market. So that's one thing. The other thing is I've been spending a lot of time focusing on what are the things, actually, I'll start it with this. Not that one, but this one. So I've also been the Twitter degen and eToro degen that I am. I've spent a lot of time on there, and many people are talking about, okay, this is, we're getting into that Q4 territory where we're thinking about like, this is the end. So I've got a bit of a different spin on that as well. So typically, yes, we've got these 4-year cycles, and they tend to end in Q4 of the fourth year. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got 2 up years, we've got 1 sideways year, and we've got 1 down year. So we're in that sort of period here. So I track this, and I'm mindful about it, but I don't think this tells the entire story, because right now, as I've shown here, our macro factors are all positive. So if they're positive, for me personally, there's nothing for me to worry about. However, one of the things that I'm focused on is what was it that caused the prior cycles to start trending downwards or start crashing. And as you can see, the key macro and geopolitical drivers have been quantitative tightening, rising rates. That's a huge one. And that's something else that we track, a GDP weighted a rate hike versus rate cut indicator. And that's worked wonders. So rising rates, a stronger USD inflation. These are the things. And then, of course, geopolitical events like a Ukraine war, things like that. So these are the things that we should be looking out for. And right now, in terms of Fed QT, they actually tapered a few months ago. Rising rates, no one is talking about or thinking about rising rates. A stronger USD. The USD has broken the 100 level. It's now, down to 98. It's had a little bounce in the last few weeks, but it's down to 98. So still below that key level. Inflation is tamed. It's sitting at like 2.5% or whatever it is, the trueflation real-time figure. And no rate hikes in sight, stronger USD. So from my perspective, if we get to Q4 and we're still in this sort of Goldilocks period in terms of macro, I think we might see like a local top, in BTC, and other markets, where folks start cutting in anticipation of this is the end. But if macro still looks rosy, I'll be actively looking to reallocate. Many of my take profits probably would have reached their targets by then. And the selling the top indicators and specifically the selling the top indicators would probably be red hot by then, especially because crypto BTC will probably be at 130 to 150 if all goes according to plan. But then I'd be looking to reallocate rather than holding my bags. It's not until the macro picture changes that I'd be saying, that's it. I don't want any more. I'm just going to hold off.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing to mention, the older the cycles, the deeper and even longer the bear market, as you've highlighted there. Let's remember that back in 2017, a lot of the altcoins that had these crazy runs, 100x's weren't that uncommon, and a lot of the Bitcoin trading pairs were, the alt trading pairs were against Bitcoin, and so people were sitting on these enormous profits in a very short period of time. They were dumping their altcoins and then swapping back to Bitcoin and then cashing out. And that's really changed now, with most trading pairs being against USD. There hasn't been huge gains. Most people, I'd say the average investor, most of them haven't really made money this cycle if they're too heavy altcoins. And then you've got the people that are sitting on the Bitcoin profits. Again, they're longer time frame investors. So I don't see this huge run to the exits. And then you've got Bitcoin DeFi starting to come online, where people can pretty safely borrow now in TradFi or DeFi against their Bitcoin to take some profit or get some yield or whatever. So all that to me is this stuff I spoke about that's going to smooth out and mature this market to trade more like a stock market in line with global liquidity and other factors you've spoken about. So yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, absolutely. I do see, many folks are like, but I don't want to take profit on my BTC. And to be honest, that's probably the only one where I'd say, okay, cool, I'm comfortable not taking profits. Of course, my strategy on eToro is to outperform BTC. So I don't have the privilege or the pleasure of being like, I'm just going to stay allocated to BTC. But for the most part, for folks that want to hodl BTC and then use the DeFi rails that you've spoken about on BTC to stay allocated, but then have some liquidity or take a little bit of money out, well, I'm all for that, to be honest.
Yeah, fantastic. Any changes in your take profits recently you want to mention, or what are you thinking going forward? Because I mean, I tend to agree. If alts have a bit more of a run, I'll be looking to get out of alts as soon as we get any sort of hint that the cycles are turning, or even if we get those higher percentage gains. I know you've spoken about some take profit targets, but I'm pretty comfortable, as you say, selling most of the alt positions, going back into Bitcoin, and then as long as the macro stuff still looks good, that's kind of what I'm thinking for the next few weeks and months.
Yeah. Well, I've taken 50% of my Bitcoin position off the table at 118,300. That's not because the indicators have gone off or anything. It's because I've been here from the depths of the bear market in 2022, buying BTC at 18 grand. So taking some off the table. That's not to say that I don't think it will go higher. I've got 50% of my position still on. And the reason I've got it on is because many of my forward-looking indicators are pointing to like $135,000 to $150,000 cycle top. So if I take it off at 118, it goes to 150. That's basically 20% from all-time highs. I'm very, very comfortable with that. because I also believe that in a macro risk-off environment, we've seen 32% drawdown in BTC in a risk-on environment. Well, in a risk-off environment that's prolonged for longer than 6 months, which we saw from March 2024 to August 2024, 6-month period roughly, that was 32%. Well, let's say that extends longer to like a year of risk-off. I think we see a 50% drawdown in BTC, in which case I'd be able to buy it at, say, 75,000, which also lines up with another key level if we all remember the BTC going down to 73 or whatever it was before the rally to 120. So I've taken some BTC off the table. I've taken my entire iron position off the table. I've taken my entire Coinbase position off the table. I've been going in and out of Coinbase on a high time frame for a few years now, so that's been very profitable for me. And I think, for the most part, taking profits is absolutely warranted at all-time highs, because the risk to reward as well is skewed to the downside, right? So if we're talking about BTC, cool, it might have another 20%. Let's say I'm wrong, 30% upside from here, 40% upside from here, but the downside is quite significant, and that's just BTC. Think about all the other assets. So I think it's fair to be TPing at these levels.
Anything else you want to share on screen before we have some final thoughts to wrap up, Filip?
Have I got anything else in here? Covered that. So in terms of where we are in terms of the cycle top, so one of the things that I've recently added is a scoring system, a weighted point system, to give us an idea of, how hot are we? We can just say these are, red means hot, yellow means warm, and green means it's all good. But from a weighted point system, it gives us a better idea. So the total points that you can get, because they're weighted, Jedi is weighted higher than Normie. Normie is weighted higher than Pleb. The weighted point system is out of 1,200. So right now, the total score for the 29th of July is 31%. We actually hit this cycle high last week on the 22nd of July. For the first time this cycle, we hit 33%, or 400 points. And if we look at what that looked like compared to the prior cycle tops, we were getting close to what the 2021 local top 2 looked like, but nowhere near the cycle top prices. So I still think we've got a fair way to go. I also think that it's fair to take some profits off the table, because that's how we create wealth. Unless unless your strategy is HODL BTC, in which case I say kudos to that's a solid strategy.
Yeah, and that's a lot of people are, especially the high net worths that we talking about, for their kids and their Bitcoin and all that type of stuff. So that's very different to what we're talking about when you're saying selling half my Bitcoin and looking to reallocate if we were to get a deep pullback and wait for the metrics to flip for the next 12 months, whatever that is. It's a different strategy to ultra long term. But as you say, some of the guys in the group, when Bitcoin went below 20 and ETH went below 1,000 and we nailed that bottom, if you've been buying around that time and now you're up whatever that is between 5 and 10x depending on if it was in Solana or Sui or Bitcoin ETH, those majors, it's absolutely time to be taking some profits and you should be hitting some of those life goals and realistic goals that you set for sure.
100%. Yeah, no one ever went broke taking profits. Couldn't agree more.
Fantastic. Well, I'll put all the links below to follow Filip's work, guys. And again, for members, you can see under the data tab there when Filip posts his updates. But any final thoughts for people at home, mate?
No, I think the main thing to think about is, so from my perspective, I think macro picture is rosy. There might be a local top just because of the profit taking that happens in Q3, Q4. If I had to, gun to my head, do we still see a positive year in 2026 if macro stays the same? I think we do until midterms. People should probably go and study what happened in the midterms in 2018. Markets were still rallying. TradFi markets were still rallying until just before the midterms. So I think that's something to think about. But otherwise, right now and for the foreseeable, say, next 3 months, I think we're all rosy.
Amazing, mate. Well, keep up the great work. It's a fantastic tool you've developed from everything that's been been the most accurate metrics over the years, and all in one easy to find spot. So I love your work. You've done really well. It's great to see you succeeding in the crypto space with all your own ventures now as well. So we'll have to catch up again in future.
Appreciate it. Thanks, brother. Have a great day. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers, guys.